Welcome to the very first episode of Journey to Marriage. I am Asia Branch, the founder of Mind Out, Mind Up, and the extension of Mom TV, here available on YouTube.com. Now, the whole point of this show is to really prepare ourselves for the responsibility that comes with being in a marriage. And I think the best way to do that is to prepare our mind, our body, and our spirit for what we fully have to give for a marriage to actually be successful. It is a miraculous gift that God has to offer us, but we must be ready for it. We can't just leap into it. We can't just say that's what I want and not actually do the work to handle that kind of a commitment. And so, full disclosure, I am not married. I am not. But I do want to be. And so I recognize that the type of woman that I was a few years ago was not the type of woman that I know the man that I would love to be with would want. So I had to work on myself. And so a few years ago, I actually made the first step to preparing my mind, my body, and my spirit for marriage. And it wasn't even about a vow to God. It wasn't about a vow to myself, a promise that I had to keep. I just made the conscious decision to stop having sex, to be celibate, to refrain from physical gratification with another human being until I was married. That was just a choice that I made. And the reason for that was because my boyfriend at the time, it was a long time ago, I think I was 20 years old. Yes, I was 20 because I stopped having sex when I was 20, turning 21. So this is how long ago it was. I was 23 and I'm turning 24 in July. The guy that I was with at the time, he and I were engaging in sex, but that's because I assumed that that's what was expected out of a relationship. I am supposed to do that for my boyfriend. And so the few words that he said to me while we were engaging, mind you, we were actually having sex at that moment, he uttered in my ear, I swear to God, he uttered, "I'm going to put a baby in you." Now, he said that, which makes absolutely no kinds of sense. Yes, we were safe. Yes, we were using protection. But that isn't the point, right? The point is he's putting that in my ear as we're engaging, and we're engaging in a act that, has, at the end result, after 9 months, is a baby. So you can't say that to a girl who is not in the position to be a mom, who's not in a position to fully give to a child. Why would you say that? Especially while having sex. So fellas, side note, if you're in the dating pool, the quickest way to get a girl to drop your behind is to tell her you're going to get her pregnant without even having had the conversation about marriage. She is not in the mood to have a baby daddy, because Lord knows I wasn't. I was not having no baby daddy. I am a traditionalist when it comes to children, and I need to be married first. I ain't popping out no kids to just some dude spreading his seed around. So you can't just say that to girls. I'm just giving that to you guys for like some type of advice. I hope you don't say it, but if you have, well, now you know she ghosted you. Now you know why. But I digress. Once I heard him say that, I instantly remembered that this is exactly what this act is for. This is supposed to have a child at the end of this. That's what this whole thing is for, is to reproduce, is to have children. And because I recognized that I was not in the position to become a mom, I was not in the position to share my life with this person who would be the father of my child if I allowed that to happen. So I just stopped. So for 2 years, from 21 to 22, I was celibate. I was not having sex. And the thing is, it isn't very easy to be celibate. It's difficult, especially when you know what you're missing, right? My mindset on sex when I had first started engaging, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a background so you have an understanding of how I got to that decision without having to make a promise to God or, swear something to myself. I just made that conscious choice to not have sex anymore. And this is because of everything that had happened as far as my numbers were concerned. And I don't remember the name of the movie. It was with Anna Faris and Captain America. And her number was very, very high. I think it was like 19 or 20 or something like that. And that number was my number was never like that. It was never like, oh my gosh, your number's almost 20. Heck, my number never even got close to the double digits, but still. The number was too high for my interest, so I had to stop. Between the ages of 17 years old and 20 years old, my number was high enough for me to say, you know what, I really should stop having sex. But I did have a boyfriend, and I did expect that this is what we were supposed to do in a relationship. But after he said those 7 words, I was kind of done. I'm like, okay, dude, I can't with you. I can't. So I stopped having it. And I'm going to tell you guys, it has not been easy. I went to older people, older women, and the advice that they give, I mean, when I say older women, I don't mean boomers, okay? Because boomers generally won't promote sex outside of any type of relationship, whether it be marriage or, boyfriend, girlfriend status. If you're not in a relationship, then you really shouldn't be having sex. Boomers would generally say that. To the ones who are a little bit more accepting to the way things have changed, how women don't wait till marriage, but at least wait till you have a relationship where he's worthy of that where he's worthy of your body. And so the women that I'm going to, they were, under the age of, 60 something. You're looking at between the age range of like 40 and let's say 49. So that's what I mean by older women. Younger than boomers, but definitely older than the millennials, the older millennials anyway. They would talk about sex like it was this, empowering, this way of freeing themselves from Lord knows what, because they never actually tell you what you're freeing yourself from, and they never actually tell you how it empowers you. They just say that it does. And when you are a young woman coming into adulthood who is engaging, but, you admire these women. These are the strong women. These are the strong, independent women. And when they give you advice, you want to cling on to it like it's the greatest advice you'll ever get in the world. And so you start to mimic based off of the advice that they've given you. You start to move based off of the advice that they've given you, and you find yourself having sex a little bit more. But I didn't find it, empowering. I didn't find it freeing. In fact, when I really sat down and took a minute to understand it, I was more depressed. I was lonely, and I wasn't very happy. I was not. It was playing a role in my unhappiness. It was playing a role in my weakness, because I was willingly giving something so powerful, willingly giving something so intimate away to not just anybody, but to anyone who stuck around for just more than 3 months. And that's what I was doing. And that was not okay. So I had to stop. Wasn't because of promise to God. It wasn't because I felt like I just had to do this because I needed to do it for myself. It was just, these guys out here today are not really trying to do marriage, but they're talking about you becoming their baby moms, and I'm not that girl. So the only way to prevent myself from being a baby mama, I have to not have sex, not engage in it. Now, just because you declare yourself celibate doesn't mean, it's as simple as saying you're going to be celibate, but it is not easy to pull it off. There are so many things that can happen while you're celibate in the very beginning. It's like any addict with their really bad habit, right? You have slip-ups. You have to be able to recognize what's going to get you there, what's going to make you slip up, things like that. You have to, refrain from it for a while. And it's not easy once you know what you've had. The difference between those who are celibate and those who are like drug addicts, alcoholics, luckily for us, unless you're on like the path of not, becoming a nun or becoming a priest or whatever, unless you're on that path, what's good about us is that when you do get married, you can actually start having sex. As much sex as you want with your husbands or with your wives when you get married. This is how we have to pull it off. We have to be very practical about celibacy. You have to be practical about celibacy. And so when we return, we are definitely going to talk about how to be practical. Like, what do we do in the meantime, between time of declaring ourselves celibate and actually getting married? And we're going to talk more about that in just a second. So I'll see you guys in just a moment. Welcome back, everyone, to Journey to Marriage. Now, before we cut to our commercial, we were talking about being practical when making our declaration of celibacy. Like I said before the commercial break, it is very simple to declare it. But maintaining that declaration is one of the hardest things that I've ever encountered. But I have come up with a few things that I think should be able to help you along your path to celibacy. The very first thing that I realized that I had to do is I had to take time for myself. And when I say that, I don't just mean, being alone and things like that. Like, you don't want to seclude yourself. You don't want to be in a world of seclusion. You don't want to hide from anybody. What you want to do is stay away from things that give you those urges. So if you know that going out with your girlfriends to clubs and there's a guy that's really feeling you or checking you out, don't go over there and talk to him. Don't be around men who you think you're going to be attracted to. Don't watch or be around people who are going to get you excited about sex. You don't want that. You want to keep your distance from anything sexual, whether it be television, music, whatever it is that gets you in the mood, avoid it like the plague. Simply because you need to get comfortable with the decision. You need to be okay with being celibate. You need to be comfortable in your own skin. You need to be fine with the fact that you are not having sex anymore. And you have to define who you are now that you're not having sex. I had to do that. So for the first year, from the very tail end of my being 20 into 21 up into 22 was the very first year of celibacy. That was the year. That year was the year that I took for myself. I avoided. I'm already an old soul, so listening to music that may get you aroused, like Drake or Beyonce or anything like that, I was already not listening to. Certain movies or shows that might get you aroused, I'm already not into, because I don't really like vulgarity in my films or my television or in my music personally. So avoiding those weren't difficult because I was already not doing that. So what I had to do is I had to take my time away from being around, men. I had to avoid dating for a little while. I had to avoid being around men who I had been with once before, but weren't active anymore. We were friends, but still I couldn't be around them because the urges were there. And I had to avoid those urges simply because I had not prepared myself to say no at that point. That's what you really have to do. You need to be sure about yourself. You need to be okay with the decision, with the declaration. And once you're there, man, being celibate is a little bit more easy, simply because you've refrained from it for so long. You've taken the time to be okay with yourself and not having sex. You've taken the time to really define who you are now that you're not having sex. Those choices, your mind becomes a lot clearer about the subject, about the declaration, in fact, because you've refrained from it, or you've refrained from those urges. Now, for those of you who like the music of today, who like film of today, that's going to be a little bit more difficult, simply because, women, we're easier to arouse. The right song, the right movie, the right line from a guy, if he can be charming, romantic. These are the things that get you turned on. So for however long you need to stay away from the things that turn you on, do that. Take the time to stay away from it, so when you do get around it again, you can say, okay, that may turn me on, but I'm still not going there. You may be attractive and I may be physically attracted to you, but I'm still not going there. This sex scene may have been so freaking hot on Power, but I'm still not going to go out there and have sex simply because Power turned me on because of a scene with Ghost and whichever woman he's with around this season. Whatever it is that you need to avoid that turns you on, do that. Take the time to stay away from it. For me, it was a year. It was a year. And it wasn't like I had music or films or anything that turned me on, because, again, that's more modern culture and like modern TV, modern music, modern film. And I really prefer to watch older stuff like Philadelphia Story with Katharine Hepburn and so forth. But I digress from that. The thing that turned me on was a gentleman. gentleman, not just guys, but a gentleman, a man who opened my door. So feminists, if you're watching, you might not like this part. If he opened my door, I liked him. If he was cultured, or not even so much that he was cultured, but he could have a discussion. He was intelligent. He has ambition. He's strong. And of course, the shallow things that we all like in a man, right? Him being tall and him being drop dead gorgeous like George Clooney or Idris Elba. That's difficult. That was difficult for me because, again, my last boyfriend was charming. He was a gentleman. He was respectful. And he loved music in general. Maybe not today's music. I mean, he did love that. But he could take it as far back as I could as far as music. So that's what turned me on. A strong, intelligent man who loved anything and everything. That's what turned me on. So for a year, I had to avoid that. So that's the first step, okay? Taking the time you need to reject the turn on or not be so susceptible by the turn on. So take that time. That's the very first thing that I learned. The next thing, once you've taken that time to yourself, the very next thing is to keep dating. That's it. The whole point of being celibate, for me anyway, was to wait until I was married. So how am I going to get married if I don't go out there and date? You need to date. If you want to find your husband, you have to go out there and you have to be willing to find him. You know, you have to make that leap. After you've taken your time, after you've recognized what turns you on and taken a break from it for a little while, you know, kept your distance from it for a while, now you know how to handle yourself. Now you know what it is that you want. As far as a relationship is concerned, now you know what you have to do to keep yourself from from taking the next step, as everybody calls it. Don't know why, but okay. You have to keep dating. You know, and I know women out there, y'all are probably saying, you know, no man who you tell that you're waiting till marriage is going to stick around. I used to think that. I really did when I was first declaring myself celibate. I used to think that that's how it was because the first guy that I did date afterward proved me right as far as, okay, so you're not trying to go there. You're not trying to respect that decision of mine. So you're not the kind of guy for me. So you know what I realized by the end of this? I changed my type in men, right? The shallow me, the girl who was looking for the tall, dark, and handsome, drop dead gorgeous like Idris Elba and George Clooney, really tall and muscular, still, you know, cultured and charming, and all those things that turn me on. As far as the shallow parts, the tall, dark, and handsome, all in the looks and his height and things like that, those things start to disappear. The shallow things that we're looking for in a man start to disappear. You know, you start to really pay more attention to the man who respects your choice, you know, who provides you with conversation. Now, I remember I was actually on my Instagram, Mind Out, Mind Up's Instagram, and I had to do some research. I was trying to see, does anybody post about celibacy? Does anybody understand what we go through? And while I was going on Instagram, I'm going to pull up the picture for you guys now. Here it is. This post was posted by @godlycourting on my Instagram. And it says, when you kick it with a man without having sex. You know, you see this picture? It's so freaking amazing because that's the key right there. Do you have fun with this man outside of sex? Like, do you guys do anything outside of sex? Because if all you're doing is having sex, maybe he's not the guy for you. Maybe you should go out on an actual date. Go to dinner. Go to a beer from like the show Cheers or something. Do something. That's number one. And number two, when doing those things outside of sex, do you actually have fun with this person? Because if the answer to that question is no, then yeah, no, he is not the type. He is not the guy that you should be with. And we're going to talk more about that in just a second. So I'll see you guys in just a moment. you just have to be sure that you change your type, okay? You have to do that. Because I guarantee you, if you want to maintain your declaration of celibacy, you're not going to stay interested in the guy who's tall, dark, handsome, and arrogant. Tall, dark, and handsome, and doesn't give a rat's ass about your commitment. His one goal is to try and get you to break it. That's the guy that you're going to want to avoid. And the only way to do that is by changing your type. So just be sure to do that. The next thing that I realized that you had to do was forgive yourself for any of the slip-ups. Now, I did say that it was difficult to maintain your celibacy. Now, for me, I went the whole year, right? And then after that, I thought, I was in the niche of things. I was, celibate, was making the choices. And so I felt like, okay, I think I'm good to go back out there. I'm good to go back to dating and being around people who may be active and I'm not. I'm okay with being around people who want to talk about sex, and me not having to actually engage in it without having to, so I can still I can have conversations, but I know I'm comfortable being around those people now, right? And one time, it was after work, I ran into an ex of mine. We went out for drinks, and one thing led to another, and I found myself realizing that I regretted the minute it happened, and I was beating myself up about it because I had made my declaration. How could I break my promise to myself? How could I break my vow, my declaration of celibacy? How could I do that? And I would beat myself up about it. And funnily enough, one of the older women that I was talking about earlier on in the episode, she helped me not feel so bad about it. She helped me, recognize that I, made the mistake in having sex, making the mistake in breaking my commitment to my declaration of celibacy. But I had to forgive myself. I had to stop beating myself up about it because it was bound to happen. I was new to this. I had just re-entered the world of people talking about sex, people engaging in sex, and being around people who I had once been with. And I had to really, really forgive myself. And I went and I did some research, and I had to find if anyone out there really understood what we were going through when you do make the mistake. Does anybody know what that feels like? And I actually found something. It was an article that I've actually found on a website called madamenoir.com. I'm going to pull up the article now. Here it is. There we go. It was written by Nicole Breeden. I can't really pronounce her last name. It was published July 2016. So this was a while ago. But that's how far I had to go back to find an article about it without the whole, priest and nunnery thing coming up. And she was in a relationship, and she had to tell her boyfriend that this was a choice that she wanted to make. And he not only respected her decision, but he made the commitment himself. He chose to be celibate. And on it, she actually talked about the slip-ups and the mistakes and, how hard it is to maintain the celibacy. I mean, it's not that easy. And so here it is. Nicole says, end quote, "To abruptly shift gears and set a new tone in a relationship is an obstacle that requires a higher level of faith and discipline that a year later we still occasionally struggle with. To be honest, we've messed up a few times over the course of our commitment. What keeps us aiming to get it right is our belief in God's forgiveness, love, and mercy. I no longer condemn myself for my mistakes. I just choose not to, but I'm not settling in them either. My story hasn't ended yet, and I don't know where this road will take us. It's possible that temptation can one day consume us again, but it's also possible that I can be happily married a year from now." Close quote. That part where she was speaking about level of faith and discipline combined and how that helps with maintaining the declaration, she's totally right about that. It is our faith in God and the discipline that we have for ourselves that helps stay in that choice, that helps not break the commitment, not break the declaration itself. But she also spoke about the slip up, the mistakes. Her and her boyfriend made the mistake. They slipped up every so often. Not every so often, but a few times, she said, they slipped up. And so she had to learn forgiveness. She recognized that God can forgive her and her boyfriend for making the mistake. God is forgiveness. He's love and he's mercy. So if God can forgive you, then you, an extension of God, an extension of Christ, can forgive yourself. So you have to do that for yourself. Always forgive yourself. You need to be able to do that. Don't beat yourself up because you slipped up. Don't beat yourself up because maybe you weren't actually really prepared to deal with the things that you were attracted to, or being around the conversation of sex, or being in such a sexual environment. Maybe you weren't ready for that yet. Maybe you needed more time to deal. But slip-ups are necessary. Mistakes are necessary. In order for you to learn, in order for you to grow, you have to make the mistake. You just have to forgive yourself for it, because God will. The last thing I realized you have to do, now that we've realized you have to, avoid your turn-ons, now that we realize that you have to keep dating, and that in itself will help you because you'll change your type. Not only do we know that we have to forgive ourselves when we make the slip-ups, but now that we've done all those things, now that we know those 3 things, what caused the slip-up? Because that's where we're at now. What caused you to slip up? What caused me to slip up? What caused her to slip up? What caused Nicole to slip up? I can't speak for Nicole, but I can speak for myself. And I could say a huge role that played in the slip up was the alcohol. And no, to you man-hating, men-bashing feminists, no, I was not raped. It was mutual. It was consensual. I had been drinking. I wasn't drunk. I was buzzed. I was nice. But even that put me in the mindset or in the in a state of arousal. So I would make that decision. So what do I know I need to do when I am trying to refrain from having sex? Avoid those things. Avoid the alcohol when I'm on a date. Number 1, don't drink and be alone with the person that you're attracted to. It doesn't work. It doesn't help. Number 2, if you are going to have drinks with this person, have other people around you who will help you check yourself. When I say check yourself, I mean by checking, that urge to have sex, the physical necessity to have sex, to take that away, to check you first before you even make that rash decision. So if you're going to have alcohol with this person, have a bunch of people around. If you're going to have a date with this person, whether it be a lunch date, which I would prefer because you could end it there and there's nothing else happening after that. But if you are going to have dinner with this person, don't have alcohol. Don't drink, because that is what, loosens your rationality. Your all sense of logic sometimes goes away, and you're operating more out of your emotions. And so if you are attracted to this person and you're drinking, I guarantee you're going to want to jump his bones. And you may not have the strength to say no if you're drinking. You may just want to go there simply because you had alcohol. I had to learn that. So when I go on dates that are dinner dates, I don't have alcohol. I don't drink those. I don't drink vodka, dark liquor, any of that. I refrain from any of it if I'm going on a date with a man. Avoid those things. Avoid anything that will lead you into a sense of temptation, that will lead you to making the choice of the mistake or the slip up. You want to avoid that. So what have we learned today? We've learned that the things that we need to do to go from promiscuity to celibacy, to maintaining our celibacy, is number 1, avoiding your turn-ons for a period of time. Number 2, once you've avoided your turn-ons, you can go back to dating. And dating will then help shape your new perspective on what you want in a man. Number 3, if and when you have a slip-up, because it's bound to happen when you've been on this journey for as long as I have now, it's bound to happen. Just forgive yourself for it. And then learn from the slip up. That leads you into number 4, avoiding the temptation. Now that you know what gets you going as far as that's concerned, now that you know what leads you to making the decision of having sex, avoid those things. For me, it was alcohol and being alone with the man that I was attracted to. Maybe you should follow my advice and do that. Thank you guys so much for joining us here today for the very first episode of Journey to Marriage. And we will keep doing these. You can expect the second episode next week. That one is going to be about celibacy, but more so how it brought me closer to not just to myself, but to Christ. How maintaining it and even making the mistakes. Like I said, you following those steps, you will make the mistakes. It will lead you to Christ. And that is episode 2, and that one you will see next week. So be sure to tune in. If you don't mind, I would love it if you guys supported us here at Mamu TV, and just be sure to subscribe. You have a good day. Hey everyone, it's Asia again. I'm the founder of Mind Out, Mind Up, and we're finally getting started with our media content. It's taken a minute, but we finally pulled it off. I have a favor to ask all of you guys though. I would really love it if you could start subscribing to Mamu TV's YouTube channel. It's finally available. You should find a little bit of Speak On It. That's both me and another host of mine, Arshel Branch, who you guys will be seeing soon with Entertainment with Archie, and my show, Journey to Marriage. So if you wouldn't mind, please subscribe to Mamu TV. Also, we do have a GoFundMe happening right now, and we would love it if you guys could just donate whatever you can. It'll totally help us with resources, staffing, payroll, whatever we can use it for to help build Mind Out, Mind Up, and to push forward our conservative agenda. If you guys just give us a help on that one, we would much appreciate it. Thank you so much, and have a great day.